powers has no doubt been the cardinal focus of the calls for restructuring, but research has shown that many of the issues associated with same are largely not put into perspective. That's our trust on the program Frank Talk this day. I am Alpha Jagden. And with me in the studios this morning to walk us through the evolution of powers and matters arising is Mr. Jide Ojo. Mr. Jide Ojo happens to be a development consultant. Sir, as always, it's my pleasure having you on set this morning. All right. A very good morning to you. Now, we need to get to the nitty-gritty of the issues, because when you go out there and you hear responses, you hear perspectives to what the evolution of powers is, most times they don't meet up. I will need to find out from you, what in your opinion is the evolution of powers?
Thank you very much, Alpha. The evolution of power basically derived from the word devolve, and that means trying to remove something from something.
That's right.
It's like in more practical times, when you say devolution of power, now you are removing power from one center of authority to another. Right now, we have three different center of authorities as recognized by the Constitution. We have the exclusive legislative list, the concurrent legislative list, and whatever is not in either of these two belongs to the residual.
Right.
So, what they all ulabalo about devolution of power has to do with the part of the Constitution, I think the third schedule, which actually itemized 68 items, listed 68 items that is exclusively within the purview of the federal government. That means those issues in those 68, those issues, those things that are covered by the 68 items are exclusively to be legislated on and administered by the federal government.
Okay.
So then you have about 20 or thereabout in the concurrent legislative list. Now let me break it down a little more. For instance, in the exclusive legislative list in the top schedule of the 1999 Constitution as amended in 2010, you have issues like currency, defense, police, railway, post and telecommunication,
right.
and
Foreign
affairs, all of them exclusively within the purview, including, I've mentioned police. So many, foreign affairs, defense, and all whatnot. Solid mineral,
Right.
including solid mineral. Everything is within the purview of the federal government. It's in the exclusive. So it's only National Assembly that can legislate on them. But then when you move to the concurrent legislative list, we are talking of agriculture, health, education, and some other issues like that. But there are not very many on the concurrent. So you have a quote and unquote omnibus exclusive legislative list. Now, the argument is that we are running a federal government in a unitary way. That going back to 1963 Constitution, which people like Baba Bisi Akande, the former interim chairman of APC and former chairman of Action Congress of Nigeria, and former governor of Osun State, said, look, let's go back to 1963 Constitution, because in that 1963 Constitution, it talks more of regionalism, and that the regions are the one even contributing to the center. So whatever you are getting, exploring your own resources, whether agriculture or natural resources, solid mineral, you only contribute percentage to the center. Unlike now that there is what is called feeding bottle federalism, where every state line up monthly FAC, Federal Allocation Committee. They, turn by turn, Abia, here is your envelope. You look at it, it's 2.1 billion. Last month we got 3.5. I said, the oil is not too good now. So you wait. Or Bauchi is your turn. So the 36 states lined up every month to collect, and nobody is bringing anything to the center. So there is no contributory federalism. It's only consumptive federalism we are running, which is very dysfunctional and unproductive. Because why, for the life of me, should I have a resource or resources in my backyard, and somebody in the name of federal government will come and explore that resources? Or I collect taxes, somebody collects it for me and give it to those who do not. We are not running socialism.
That's right.
You will recall that a few days ago, the finance minister said Lagos alone is contributing 55% of value-added tax in Nigeria. 55%, but yet states that have banned alcohol, that have banned that have banned smoking, they are sharing out of the proceeds of money realized from value-added tax that are collected on that count. So, is it not a dysfunctionality that Nasarawa State, that is besides us here, as is called the solid mineral state?
That's right.
The state of solid mineral. Over 30 solid mineral in commercial quantity. Yet, the federal government had to go, license some people, exploit, and now redistribute. So, what is wrong? If Nasarawa is allowed to explore its own resources, and then you have your federal government agents that monitors what, just like customs duty and excise. Yes. You have a custom person is installed in a company to know how much company duties or excise duty that company should pay. Right. And it pays to the coffers of the federal government. But here you have lining up like school children and getting an envelope that is never predictable.
That's right.
Today you can get more, tomorrow you get in less. But it is a dysfunctional system because it has also made very many states and local government to be very lazy intellectually. Because they are not able to think out of the box.
No innovation.
No innovation. So we are saying, why don't you devolve some of this power? For instance, solid mineral, does it have to be under the exclusive legislative list?
No.
Police, does it have to be under the exclusive legislative? Railway, does it have to be under? Electricity, does it have to be? You recall that Metro Line, when Jakande administration in 1980, between 80 and 83, Lagos, wanted to set up a Metro Line, Buhari then, the federal government of Shagari then, stopped him. I said, look, this is under the purview of federal government. And today, look at that mega city now. There's huge transportation challenge. In the 60s, early 60s, we used to have native authority police, which is like equivalent of sheriff in US. But today, everything is centralized. People have been saying that this Ozubulu's killing in Anambra that took place yesterday, that if there are community policing, they will have been able to profile appropriately the field that exists within that family and be able to identify before things got out of hand. But here you are, 24 hours after that incident, no arrest has been made.
That's right.
And
we're
because
getting interim reports.
Interim. So at the end of the day, you may have a scenario where you are not able to arrest the culprit because the federal police, the man is possibly from, the DPO is possibly from Akwa Ibom, is not familiar with the environment in Anambra. Maybe he's even new, he's just assumed duty. Maybe the DPO, maybe the divisional, or what of. So what we are saying in essence is that, or what the agitation is all about is, why don't you reduce the overburdened federal government of some of these equivalent duties, devolve those powers to the state, but in a commensurate manner. You have to address, because you can't devolve power without financial autonomy. Right. You have to also readjust or totally scrap what is called this revenue allocation and mobilization, whatever that
Commission.
decides
Who gets what?
what percentage goes to federal, what percentage, because right now this federal is getting a cumulative 52%.
Yes.
About 42% and 7.5% special fund
That's right.
that it manages on behalf of the entire federation. The states are getting 26. Local governments are getting 20. Now, if you devolve more power, then you have to devolve more resources. Because, like the argument is, if you run state police today, what about funding it? Lagos state government, I read over yesterday, Ambode said he spent 15 billion last year in 2016 on security of Lagos. 16 billion that is spending on something that is not directly
under
his purview. Because the governors, as you know, is just in power without authority when it comes to security matters. They are not the chief security. They are the chief security officer, but in what? But they cannot issue a directive to the state commissioner of police.
Not at all.
You recall what happened in Rivers when the retired AIG Mbubu, then commissioner of police in Rivers State, when he would be taking orders from Abuja.
Instead of
Instead of the chief security officer, to the extent of locking out even the governor, blocking the road to his office. So you also recall that in Plateau, when there were these security issues, the now Senator Donald Jang cried out and said, "Look, I'm just the chief security officer in name, not in what. I can't tell the Army Garrison commander to do anything."
Daria said a similar thing.
So what we are saying is that if you devolve power, then it will be power with authority.
That's right.
Then you know who to hold responsible.
And there must be financial backing.
There have to be.
That is what will make it. Now, looking at all these hues and cries and what have you, will I be right to say, listen, this thing is all about resource control?
It's not far from it. Because what I've said, what I've initiated, is basically that there are elements of resource control in it, but it's not entirely resource control. It's like saying all accidents are incidents, but not all incidences are accidents. Resource control is part of the devolution of power. Right. But for instance, what resources are you going to be controlling if, on the issue of there are some of the issues out of those 68 items that doesn't really have to do with resources per se, but which you don't also need to make an exclusive preserve of the federal government. But there are quite a chunk of it that has to do with resource control. For instance, the issue of local government autonomy. Do you know it's part of the devolution of power?
Well, that is actually the crux of the matter. That's for me. Because you cannot talk about devolution of powers without absolute, dare say absolute autonomy. We're not talking of financial autonomy. We're not talking of some sense of autonomy. The autonomy must be complete.
It has to be both administrative and financial.
That's it.
And you cannot hold on to the local government when you want to be off the apron string of the federal government as a state governor. And the fear basically about devolution of power is the propensity for abuse. That the crop of governors that we have in states are behaving like emperors, even with few that is entrusted into their hands.
They are demigods.
They are demigods. They are tingos.
In most cases.
You can't challenge them. I want to be proved wrong that this constitutional amendment that the National Assembly has passed, that the sections that didn't favor the governors, whether they will scale through
in the states houses of assembly,
because we have history to back us up.
That's right.
In the 6th Assembly, when the current 2010 amendment was done, the federal legislature, the National Assembly, gave financial autonomy to state houses of assembly. You know what? The governors ganged up and said, look, you can't have this.
It's not going to work.
And you know, they have to have 24 states out of 36 to meet the two-thirds threshold.
That's right.
To be able to scale the order of amendment. There was controversy about whether they had that threshold or they didn't have. So the lawmaker in the 6th National Assembly invited the Speaker of the State House of the Speaker of the Conference of State House of Assemblies. I've forgotten the name of the gentleman. To Abuja. Is it that we have 24 or 23? The man came, looked right, left, and center. He said, we have 23. That's the one state that was calculated or was believed to have voted yes for, did not vote yes. And I felt ashamed that somebody wants to empower you and you say, no, I like being disempowered. So, but we know that they were engineered to do that.
That's right.
Because of their own selfish interest too. Because if your governor said, look, you won't win a re-election if you go against my way. If you stand your ground, we have seen deputy governors that fell out with their principal.
It happens all the time.
But today they are better off. Look at the Yinaya Baribe. After he was removed as deputy governor under Oji Uzokalu in Abia,
That's right.
did he not bounce back politically?
He did.
Is he not serving in second or third term as a senator?
He is.
So, has that shot him out of political ambition?
No.
But these people they don't believe in themselves. And because they felt, look, if we go against the governor, he will starve us of fund, he will remove me as speaker, he will do this. So they are only thinking about their own self-preservation.
But you know, beyond self-preservation, we cannot even just end it there, because I and you know quite a number of local governments across different states in this country has not held election for quite some time.
Even those who hold it, what quality of election do they have?
The thing.
Many of them are rushing to have elections now, but what's the quality of those elections?
All that happens is whoever Mr. Governor says will be, becomes.
But you know my own grounds about that is that you blame the victim. Many of us are quick to blame the State Independent Electoral Commission. Oh, they are stooges of the governor. Oh, that I happen to have worked with them in my course as a consultant. And when you hear their stories, you weep for them. Many of them are very successful people, retired civil servants, ambassadors, professors, people of timber and caliber.
They've done good.
They've done
well
good
for themselves.
well for them. But when they appoint you, the first thing you notice is that there is no funding
That's right.
to run your office. Even in terms of housekeeping, in terms of running the office.
The very basic of things.
Basic things. You are just there reading newspapers. Nothing goes. Then the governor will tell you when the election should hold. And then you prepare your budget, the state assembly looks at it, asks Mr. Governor, should we give them this money? Say, no, that is too much. They want to steal it. Slash it to a third. Give them 1/3. I've been confided in at a conference workshop where we try to understand what are the challenges that State Independent Electoral Commission are having. And one of them said, look, there was a time they wanted to have an election. They prepared the budget. They gave the state governor. The state governor, by stroke of pen, said, look, you can't have this. So they slashed the money, through the state assembly, rather, when they went for budget defense. The state assembly slashed the budget. Like, you need 1.8 billion, they now gave you 800 million. So the governor was waiting for them to announce the date for election. He said at some point, the governor now felt worried and called him. Now the chairman of the State Independent Electoral Commission of that state. I don't want to mention it. So he said when he got to His Excellency, yeah, I was waiting for you to announce the date. After all, you've gotten money for election. The one said comically, he said, Your Excellency, sir, which of the senatorial districts should we start the election from? So that if we have this senatorial district now, When we have more money, we move to the next one. He said, what do you mean? I said, sir, we only got 1/3 of what we budgeted for. And there is no magic. I can't use my personal resources. You know, Your Excellency. We are not even having interest to run the office. And he said, okay, I will see to that. I will see to that. Before he eventually make up and now gave them sufficient resources to hold the election. But people have forgotten that INEC also used to have that same challenge.
That's true.
Way before 2010.
That's right.
I knew these institutions because I work with them. INEC wanted to, during the tenure of Professor Maurice Wu, in 2006, ahead of 2007 election, they wanted to have a voter registration exercise.
No funding.
It was scheduled to begin in September. As at that time, they have only 1,000 units of DDC machine when they needed 34,000. No vendor is ready to release without a
Cash backing.
cash bashing. So what did INEC do? For those who are familiar with that history, they had to start with some select areas and now started scaling up gradually as more resources was brought to them. They didn't eventually do a nationwide until February, ahead of 2014 and 2007 general election, which was going to hold in April.
That's right.
So when you now have voter registration exercise too close to election, what will be the quality of that voter registration register?
Definitely it will be compromised.
It will be compromised because you have done a horrid job. They cannot do they cannot run
No
AFIS on it
verification.
to remove the
No
padded.
verification,
So
yes.
it was and that was anybody surprised that the 2007 election
was
turned out
bad.
to be
one
of the worst in the history of this country. But people don't know that it was because of
And
lack of.
unfortunately, Iwu's head carried it.
He has to. Yeah, he's the head now.
That's
the
it.
buck stops at his table.
Because he became so unpopular in the country.
They say wuru this that, but they never knew his challenge actually because you know when you are in public service you can't talk. It's like when you are eating you don't talk. That's against African culture. You remember when you are eating you can't talk. So that is why people like us who work with them, who feel their pain, sometimes bring the issues to the fore. Not because we are sent, but I always want people to appreciate the enormity of the challenges that these people face, which they cannot themselves openly disclose.
That's
because that would be against civil service rule. Remember, anonymity. You are to be seen, you are not to be heard.
That's it.
But we that works with them, that feels their pain, always bring their issues to the fore. That look, but let me now compare. That was in 2006 under Iwu. Iwu was removed.
That's right.
In 2010. They brought in a Professor Jega. Professor Jega requested, because after the amendment, the constitutional amendment, INEC funding was now placed on Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation account.
That's right.
Which means that whatever is budgeted comes to it directly, not through the circumlocutors or
Somebody on some kind of first line charge.
now a first line charge on the Consolidated Revenue Fund.
That's right.
The people don't appreciate what it means and what it has done to the image of INEC.
That's it.
Because you know, in 2007 when you say you are INEC staff, people will look at you like fraudsters.
That's right.
But you know what changed all of that? To the extent now that they can walk freely, they can raise, they can show you out their ID card, was because when their funding was now on first line charge of Consolidated Revenue Fund.
That's right.
Let me draw the same parallel. Jegana said, look, the 2006 register we had Michael Tyson, late people who have died and all of that, because people were cutting calendar, almanac, and were using the picture to put on the voter register. So we have Michael Jackson, we have Mike Tyson, we have many politicians who have died featuring on INEC's register then.
We have to start all over again.
He said, I can't even audit this. I have to do a fresh one. And I need 120,000 DDC machines. He would needed 33,000. He couldn't get resources. Jega decided to have 1 DDC machine for one polling unit, and we have 120,000 polling units, and he got the money. And he did it in 1 week. They were able to do nationwide polling unit based voter registration exercise ahead of 2011 elections.
Right.
And they had a far more better and credible election and register than 2007. But people didn't know the difference was in the funding made available to the two head of the same commission. So how many of the state independent electoral commission had the benefit, magnanimous benevolence of their governor to give them everything they need to run their elections as at when due? The Lagos that just had its own election, they didn't have it as at when due. It was 6 years ago they had the last one. 6 years ago. I stand to be corrected. 6 years ago. It was supposed to be every 2 years. So they have had to run the local government administration in Lagos State by caretaker committee and sole administrator, which is at variance with constitutional provision in section 7 of the constitution, which says that local government election, the local government must be run by democratically elected representatives of the people.
That's right.
So these are what we are saying. You need to devolve power, but you need to devolve resources
That's right.
to match those powers you are devolving. Otherwise, it will amount to same of same.
That's true. You know, as we move on, I want to get your perspective. How best do you think the National Assembly should approach issues that bother on devolution of powers? Because this is one sore area that was not really looked into, you know, with the just concluded exercise. They are of the opinion that when they come back in September, they will look into it. You gave us an analysis much earlier. There are about 68 issues on the concurrent list. Yeah. We have about 20 on the, on the exclusive, about 20 on the concurrent, and then, you know, the residual and what have you. How best, in your opinion, should they approach that? I am a bit worried, Jide, about having a state police in Nigeria. That is my perspective.
Yeah, every same person should be worried. But it's an inevitable thing for this country going forward. Knowing full well that whether we like it or not, in an informal sense, we already have state police. Every state now, practically every state has what is called vigilante services. Even though they are not constitutionally recognized.
They don't
but
carry guns.
some of them carry all these dang guns and all of that. You know, I know many states. Bakassi boys, you know, when Okeze Ikpeazu became governor, he said he was going to reinstate the Bakassi boys because the state of the security in Aba and many of Abia State was very worrisome. So I believe he must have done it. But what they do is they make the police to train them. And don't also forget, look at the war in insurgency in the Northeast. We have the civilian JTF. So who are we deceiving when we say we are running away from state policing? The civilian JTF is an equivalent of state police.
And in most instances,
because somebody is paying them something.
They understand the terrain better.
They do. Look at even the kidnap that took place in Bonu Yesu last week, where they killed some NNPC staff on oil exploration and some University of Maiduguri lecturers. It was the convoy was made up of the civilian JTF, the regular army, the explorers, and so they have the complement, the full complement. They needed those civilian JTF because they understand the terrain better, and that is their usefulness. And they have assisted in no small measure on the war against insurgency. So when we say state police, we are just trying to formalize an informal structure that is already existing. Because whether we like it, look at it. When Badu issue came up in Lagos, what did they do? The state government called on the OPC to help the police. Why did they have to call OPC? Because they know that OPC understands the people, they are part of the community, and they understand who are these boys. They know how to profile them. They know their modus operandi. Because the DPO of Ikorodu may be from Kara Namoda, may be from Benue. He may not even know where a shrine is located or not. But the members of the community who are members of the vigilante will know that this is a shrine, or these people, we suspect that they are having rituals there, all of that. So what I'm saying is that I'm trying to allay your fear about state police. It's just to formalize it. Otherwise, we will continue to deal with this informal structure. They will continue to be part of our policing system. Remember way back, since 2007 or thereabout, the police itself has talked about community policing. It's just that they try to do, they institute community people into, to have a committee of, they call them PCRC or something. So community relations and all of that. So to help, so some people, I think it's PCRC or something. Yes. So what I'm saying is that it's an inevitable thing. For me, my own idea of state policing is that it should not be nationwide.
Okay.
Legalize it, like abortion is legalized in some country, like marijuana is legalized in some states in US, like gay marriage is legalized in some states. Legalize it. Any state that have the resources,
let them go on.
They can go on.
But our federal police structure is still in place.
It's still going to be in place.
Where there is a problem, where
the
state police cannot handle, you call on the
of course,
state.
the federal takes over. Okay. Because look at it this way, Jack. Right now we have state high court, don't we?
Yes.
But we still have federal high court.
That's right.
They exist concurrently.
Yes.
There are several. We have state service commission. We have federal civil service commission, state civil service commission. So why is it not that the federal civil service commission runs the entire state for them? The same thing with SIEC. I just told you the challenge with state independent electoral commission. If we fix this funding challenge, we will see a better result. And to deal with the abuses, it's about checks and balances and having a very functional legal system where people can seek redress. Because we model our federalism after that of US.
That's right.
In US, I have been there. I've observed the election in US in 2010, midterm election. Okay. I knew that they don't even have a national register of voters. And every state determines the hours of its polling and method of its voting. There are some states that you can still register to vote on the morning of election. There are states that will have shut the door maybe a week or two ahead. Some will say we are using combination of e-voting and manual voting. Some will say it's 100% e-voting. They have different diverse approaches. And the same with their policing system. They have the sheriff that operates at the county level. They have the state police. They have the federal police. So, and their work is complementary.
That's right.
And not competing. It's not adversarial. And the law is their constitution is very clear about how you can seek redress.
That's right.
Remember that Senator Barack Obama started his journey as a state senator.
That's right.
Not even as a federal senator.
That's what a lot of people don't know.
People don't know that he was a state senator. They have a Senate, an House of Reps in the state.
Yes.
They have in the federal. He was first in Chicago State senator before he became a federal senator.
Right.
So if we are modeling and patterning our federalism after that of US, we can then study it very well.
But we don't need two houses of assembly at the state level.
No, I'm saying that.
No, that was just.
You know, even if you do, there are ways you can reduce the cost. There is issue of sitting allowance rather than full time. In the 60s,
we have to see it on a part-time basis.
Yes, what I'm saying is part-time. In the 60s, we have House of Chiefs and House of Assembly. The House of Chiefs seats, they are like House of Lords in UK. They have the House of Chiefs, and then they have the State House of Assembly, and they operate, but they are paid sitting allowance. So if we want to reduce federalism and presidential system of government is very expensive to run. Yes, sure. Anywhere. It's very expensive. And we can actually deal with the cost element if we block the loopholes and the leakages in the system. I tell people, even the salary that we cry about, hey, these people, they are taking 200 billion, 120 billion, 150 billion. If you look at the pay slip of a senator, it's not outrageous. Where did they get their money? Through other means. Influence peddling.
We know that.
Negotiation. When they go on oversight. Yes. Let's have your books. Eh?
They scare you, and before you know it,
Yes,
you're
you say off camera. Oh yeah, come. They'll give you a long list of people they want you to employ. We know how they make up. Otherwise, Jack, there, look at what happened earlier this year. Governor Nasir El-Rufai came up publicly showing us his income as a governor. Is it outrageous?
No.
500,000 or thereabout.
Well, he had agreed from the very inception that he and his deputy will go home with half.
No,
Just
even
like Mr. President and the Vice agreed on that.
listen,
I hope they follow through.
listen. Even let's assume that 500,000, 470 something thousand that he showed us the payslip is just half of his salary. Even if it's only 1 million, do you know how much they use to run elections?
I know that.
Will people go and sell their houses, sell their cars,
sell
their landed property? Even go and borrow money from friends and relations to run election where they will run at a loss?
Somebody was sitting right where you were seated. He ran for House of Reps 6 years ago, I believe it was. He told me he was just running for House of Reps. He spent about 60 million.
There is no one running for a governorship that spends less than $1 billion.
I agree with you. $1 billion is even small.
No, I'm saying less than. I'm just being conservative estimate. You know, somebody told us a joke. I don't know whether it's true or not. He said during Obasanjo regime, one of the northern governors was petitioned. Or they went and met Obasanjo. This man, where did he get the money to run an election? He spent $7 billion. Obasanjo was alleged to have called the governor then. Hey, come. Your people said you spent $7 billion on your election. Where did you get that money? You are a thief. Hey, and you know Baba can do that. Say, Baba, they are lying, no. I didn't spend $7 billion. It's only $4 billion I spent. Just tell me, what does the rule book says? As of today, 2017,
That's right.
I am very familiar with party financing.
These are issues we don't normally talk about.
The laws in section 91, subsection 2 to 7, categorize the ceiling for each of the elective position and penalty for breach.
That's right.
For a president, the highest you are supposed to spend on your campaign finance is 1 billion. For a governor, the highest is 200 million. For the senator, 20 million. House of Reps, 10 million. State House of Assembly, 10 million. Chairman of local government, 10 million. Councillor, I think it's 5 million. Now, tell me which of them spends that. Of course, we have issues with that.
That's right.
As an expert in that field, I have issues because you cannot say a president should spend 1 billion and said a state governor should spend 200 million.
Yeah.
A president constituency is the entire country.
That's right.
Now, what is the scientific or mathematical basis to say that a governor should only spend 200 million?
There is no basis.
If you say that a governor should spend 200 million, then a president should spend 200 million times 36 or 37.
That's right.
That would be a fair game,
That's right.
isn't it?
Yes.
Because his constituency is going to campaign all over the country. So you then multiply 200 million by 37,
37.
including
That's,
FCT. Then why should a senator spend 20 million
That's right.
when he's running in a senatorial district that is 1/3 of the state? So it was just arbitrarily done without any scientific base.
Yeah.
So that is the issue we have. But that's what the law says. Now, if a person in 2006 or maybe I think the election in contention was like a 2003 election,
That's right.
that the person can openly admit to the president that no, I didn't spend 7 billion, I only spent 4 billion. Now, where is he supposed to make up? That's why you see a governor in a state where they don't need the airport, he will go and construct one.
Just to make sure
He needs to get his kick.
recoup his money.
Senator Adolphus Wabara is on record to have openly admitted as a Senate president. He said in an interview he granted Sunday Punch way back then, said, look, some of us sold our property. Some of us sold our property to contest for this election, and we have to recoup our investment. It's a transactional politics we are playing.
That's right.
So whether we like it or not, so what I'm saying, what brought us to this whole issue of party finance is that the issue of presidentialism is expensive and all of that. How has US been able to run its own presidential system and they have not collapsed in over 200 years? It's because there are checks and balances in the system. You are poorer as a politician in US than you are than in Nigeria.
That was the case we saw in Joe Biden's case. He actually took a train back home, and if what we read was true, then come on. I mean, that says
That's
a lot.
somebody who has been a senator for almost 30 years.
I think he made mention of something like maybe only 6 senators in the history of America have served longer than
Him.
He
And
said
now,
to his shame.
almost 30 years.
That's right.
As,
he became
as
a vice president.
then a
for
vice
2
president for
years.
8 years.
8 years.
And yet he cannot afford the Medicare of his son.
His son.
That had cancer. So Obama retired after 8 years, after his long service in public service, state senator, federal senator, 2 times president of US. He has no house to himself. He's just thinking of buying a house or mortgage after his presidency. He made more money from selling his books, 2 books,
That's right.
than he made as president of America. So that is why you see their own system is runs smoothly. Because, okay, we had, I was privileged to be a resource person at a youth empowerment program organized by an international non-governmental organization just last 2 weeks. And we had as one of the resource person, Kate Osamo, who is a Nigerian that was a second-term member of parliament, but of Nigerian descent. One of the 7 Nigerians that were elected in this snap election. She's on her second tenure as member of parliament in UK. And she's shared her experiences with us. No special privileges. They go to work by rail, by train. They live in block of flat, no mansion. So you are not. It's about service. You are not even going to comprehend that you will become a millionaire by virtue of being in public service. But today, in our own democracy, people kill, maim, destroy, committed crime, all because they want to be a senator, as of remember, state chairman of a local government, all because they know that 6 months is too long.
Power becomes now the means of production.
It's a means of production. 6 months, I must have a house in Dubai.
Sure.
I must have this. Look at what our former Minister of Petroleum Resources was alleged to have pilfered. If what we are reading in the social media is anything to go by, and what is reported in even the conventional media about the discoveries in US, the 3 of them, the 2 guys, I don't want to mention this.
We'll talk about that some other day.
So when you now look at what that woman was allegedly accused to have cornered as Minister of Petroleum Resources, just imagine
But again,
what it could do for public service,
again,
schools, hospitals, and roads that are deplorable.
Again, I make bold to say all of those things she was alleged to have stolen. Was it from NNPC's revenue, or was it from these kickbacks that others are also guilty of? Let's just keep that there. You know, we're talking about devolution of powers. There was something you did mention of midterm elections. Why are we not interested in that?
Well, I think our own system is quite. You know, when people borrow, they'll say, "Look, let's contextualize our copy. We don't want to be a copycat. We don't want to do 100% copy. So I think the framers of U.S. election, of course, their own is also undergoing reforms. Remember that the issue of electoral college system was even kicked against by the beneficiary
of today.
Trump kicked against the use of electoral college
5 years ago.
Which 5 years ago? And the election was last year, isn't it?
No, I mean when Obama became president against Mitt Romney, he came out to tell Romney how angry he was, and he was blaming the electoral college. Today he's the
Meanwhile, even in the lead up to his own election, he kicked against it, believing he was going to lose. But
3
Look
days
at-
after he said he thinks it's the best thing.
You see, that is the same thing with those who are calling for restructuring in Nigeria.
That's right.
When they were in government, they kept quiet. They said, no, there's nothing wrong with our system. It's attitudinal. Today, they are the ones shouting,
Championing
and
the
championing. So what I'm saying is that, yes, midterm election is a good thing, but it's expensive. Election in Nigeria is very, very expensive because we have a huge logistical challenge.
But as you did mention, technology. Can't we like give credence to technology where we can develop, what do you call them? Softwares that you can even vote with your phone? You may not even need to go anywhere.
We will get there, but even in US, they haven't gotten there. In US, you still have to walk in. The only thing is that diverse provision, voting by proxy, early voting, voting by diaspora, out-of-country voting. They have all of those provisions for inclusiveness. They have those provisions. We don't have them right now in our own system. But you see, running election, the official cost of running last general election was over about 120 billion. That's on the part of the INEC alone.
On the state.
On the state alone.
Taxpayers' money.
It's out of what the political parties and contestants spent on their campaigns. It's out of what the civil society who observes the election, monitors the election petition tribunal, monitors voter registration spent. What the donor community like European Union, DFID, USAID spent on the development partners. It's out of that. So you can just imagine if you have to spend that kind of huge sums every 2 years. That's why many African countries, remember, in Kenya, that's having the election tomorrow, it's 5 years, every 5 years.
Right.
In Rwanda, where it's 7 years.
That's right.
They have their election every 7 years. It's only Nigeria and a few other African countries that have their elections every 4 years because it's very expensive. Look at it. Congo DR postponed their election by 2 years because they can't afford the election.
No money.
In Liberia, most of their elections have been run by UN, funded almost 100% by UN. So you can't overburden your benefactors to say you want to be running midterm elections. So it's not entirely because ours is short. Let's say that we have a 7-year term. We can say, okay, every 3 years or every 4 years, let's have a midterm. Or split the election and say, election into this number of seats we hold this year. And then, of course, it's a means of staggered election.
That's right.
It's a staggered election. But indirectly, we now have a staggered election in our own system as a result of Supreme Court pronouncement.
That's right.
We now have at least officially 7 states that are not having their elections alongside. Anambra will have its own November 18. In next year, there will be a Ekiti and Osun before the 2019 general election. So indirectly, we are having a staggered form of election, but it's just not officially in our constitution. So we are getting there by and large.
As we prepare to sign out, I would just want to find out, I really wish we had more time. I wanted us to run through some of the things on the exclusive list that you would have wanted to see come to the concurrent. But something like transportation, what's really your take? Who do you want to see construct state roads?
The states should construct their own roads. I strongly believe, look, what we need to do, we haven't adopted best practices in our road management structure. We cannot run away from taxing to maintain the roads. States cannot maintain this road. Federal government cannot maintain the road. We need to bring the tolling back. And in US, many of the roads are tolled. But people see value for that tolling. What in our own case, we never saw the bulk of the tolling was going to private pockets. They printed their own tickets and were issuing it. That was why Obasanjo said, okay, we'll rather go for fuel tax. But fuel tax is no longer tenable now because the price of crude has been astronomically increased under this administration. So we just have to, but the roads, I think, are better managed by the states.
All right, we'll have to keep it there. That has been our program, Frank Talk, this morning. Do join us tomorrow for yet another interesting edition. But before we go, I want to say a very big thank you to you, Jide, for stopping by this morning to share your thoughts and your perspectives with us on the devolution of powers. As always, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Alpha Jackton.
Thanks for having me.
Thank
It's a pleasure.